How's it going, everybody? Adrian here, and welcome to the World Record Report, the series where we talk to recent world record achievers about how they did it and what makes their game so great as a speedrunning game. I'm really excited for today's episode. We talked to three really incredible people with some really interesting games. We're going to start with the runner Reclaimer, who runs the game Bayonetta. He is super passionate about this game. He had so many really interesting things to say. I wish I could have included the entire interview. Super dedicated runner, really awesome things to see in this game, and it's constantly evolving. So I highly encourage you to check this one out. Next, we talked to Weatherman64, who did the 100% speedrun in the Simpsons Road Rage. And this speedrun is almost 8 hours long, which is like mind-blowing to me. I know that there's some other speedruns out there that are longer, but still 8 hours, it's quite the achievement. So I talked to him all about, why this game and, how do you even prepare for an 8-hour run. And finally, I got the chance to talk to Lime, who did the 100% run for Zelda Link's Awakening, and this is the version that released in 2019. Again, super cool game, lots of tech in there that is really interesting and visually pleasing. You don't have to be like super in-depth on the game to know what's going on. And yeah, that's about it. I hope you enjoy. If you have any feedback, let me know. If you like videos about speedrunning, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And until next time, farewell.
Hey, my name is Reclaimer, and I just got the world record for Bayonetta. Getting the world record for me was just... I've had it for the last 8 months or so, but like hitting the 135 and then recently 134 barrier has been like very monumental because it's been a birth of new movement tech in the run. Because using the traditional movement that we had in the previous runs is not sufficient to hit these times. I am very happy with how the run's starting to look now. It's finally hitting like what I've had in my mind of what Bayonetta should look like when speedrun. So I'm very happy. The combat should just flow one combo to another. There should be no downtime. Every evade you should do is an animation cancel for an attack in your combo string. There should be no empty inputs, right? That's what I think the most important thing that has like shifted how the game has looked and felt and played from other runs to now. So it's beautiful. It looks beautiful and it feels beautiful to play. It's like music, I guess you could say. Everything just flows together. There is 90 minutes of no downtime. I'm not kidding. That is the run. I'm mashing to try to get through menus faster. Even like shop trips, I'm trying to be as efficient as possible. I have the inputs that I need in mind, like of everything. I'm trying to time it because there's like a small delay every time you purchase an item in the shop. I am always pressing buttons for the whole run. It's bad for controller durability. I go through a controller maybe every 2 weeks. It sucks. The triggers get broken. I use the Power A controllers that are like 25 bucks. So they're cheap, but they feel the best because the buttons are raised. Having the raised buttons makes them easier to glide across, which is super important for a lot of my inputs. So
I've never heard such a commitment to hardware.
Bayonetta is a subscription service game. Little did you know, it's kind of expensive. 40 bucks a month is 50 a month is crazy, but it's worth it. I'd say my favorite part of the run is chapter 3, but I hate chapter 3 at the same time. It's as soon as we complete our first shop trip, so we have most of all of our movement options and techniques that we used for the run given to us. So then I actually start to get to play the game correctly, the way that I envision the game to be played. That's when it starts becoming what it's fun to do. The biggest issue back then is hit stun. When you hit an enemy, there's frames where the game slows itself down. So one of the attacks that I do as a character, I play Jean instead of Bayonetta. She's a secondary character, which she does 50% more damage with Wicked Weaves, which are like combo finishers. It's the big hands, feet, and the big swords that you see in combat. So her combat is very efficient if you prioritize the big heavy attacks. Bayonetta is more bread and butter gameplay, where you're just using the standard combo chain like you would see like in a fighting game. It's just standard stuff. Jean is very specific combat. So learning Jean is way different than learning Bayonetta. They play completely differently in the speedrun. Jean has more movement capabilities because she has infinite dodges, which is a good thing. But the downside is to get witch time, you have to do it reactionarily. So you can only get witch time when you get hit. Then you evade. You can't preemptively evade. You have to do it as soon as you get hit. It's like 5 or 6 frames. Very, very small window. Jean, since she can infinitely evade, I can animation cancel the beginning of my attack. Bayonetta could only do that up to 5 times. Her 5th evade will be her exhaust evade. You can't move for like a second. So a lot of the movement stuff was never really experimented with. I made one discovery, which led to another discovery, which led to another discovery, and I've spent the last like 500 hours in game just testing stuff and just speedrunning various things. I'll play the beginning of a chapter like 20 times in a row, over and over and over, doing a slightly different movement just to see what's going on. I did first find the major movement tech back in like October of last year. I was actually doing a casual playthrough with his 3rd unlockable character. He's a secret character. He moves faster on the ground. His walk speed is super fast. And I was like, huh. Let me just play around with various movement stuff. Coincidentally, I did a downward diagonal kick, which is an afterburner kick, into a Tetsu Zonko, and I evaded after hitting an enemy, and I'm like, okay, I flew across the entire screen. The camera can't keep up. I'm like, okay, let me do that again. And I'm like, okay. I've seen other people do that before. That's not uncommon. But I started testing it out of combat. And then I'm like, okay. Wait a minute. So, knowing that I can do that, that means Chapter 3, we get our first shop trip, I get to unlock these techniques, and I start being able to use them. There's a big lava skip, a big gigantic lava lake in Chapter 3 at the very end. I was like, oh, okay. I can try to use Afterburner Kick with the Tetsu Zonko and evade out of it with the only character that has infinite evades, Jean. And I tested that, and I'm like, okay, I can clear this in 12 seconds. What? This is insane. It's highly rhythmic to make sure I don't lose my momentum, but it is a lot more forgiving than the new technique that I'm doing now, which is evading out of a stiletto. Man, there's just so many movement potential options that are available now, and I just found this 2 weeks ago. So, who knows what I'll find. I keep finding so much stuff, more efficiencies, more optimizations. As of right now, I'm the most active runner, so I'm the resource. But I will be making more like in-depth videos, a gigantic Google Doc. I'll try to make some Steam forum like guides as well, because Bayonetta 1 doesn't really have that at the moment. Nothing really in-depth. But go to the Bayonetta Speedrun Discord. That is the best place to go.
I'm Weatherman64, and I'm the current world record holder for the 100% category in the Simpsons Road Rage. So this was always one of my favorite games as a kid. I probably first started playing it when I was 5-6 years old, so kind of young for the Simpsons, but it was just always a favorite of mine. It was essentially a Crazy Taxi ripoff. I believe the creators of Crazy Taxi sued, and it was settled outside of court, so don't know for how much. But so you play as a character from The Simpsons, driving around, picking up other characters around very familiar locations if you watch the show, getting them to their destination as fast as you can, earn money along the way. More money you earn, you unlock more characters, additional maps. I started to think to myself, hey, what games could I speedrun? So I started looking on speedrun.com, took a look at a lot of my favorites from my childhood, some of the ones that I was good at, and I saw, of course, Road Rage. Saw the record, which was about 8 hours, 25 minutes at the time, set by Bacon Man 12, and I started to do some math on a big whiteboard I had in my bedroom. I thought to myself I could improve on his strategy. So on a whiteboard, I had worked out almost like within 2 minutes of my actual time what my final time would be. To get 100% in the game, you have to complete the 10 missions in mission mode, and then go on to unlock all characters and maps and earn $1 million to a cumulative $1 million to win the game. So I had gotten this record back in, I think it was late 2020, early 2021, somewhere around there. He took it back about a week or two later, so I was kind of disheartened. But fairly recently, had an epiphany with a new strategy, tried it, and ended up working out. So for each level, you earn money faster for the first $10,000 or so. You earn money at a faster rate, and then it kind of tapers off beyond that, but at a consistent rate. So I thought to myself, if I can maximize the time I spend earning that first 10,000, my time would theoretically decrease. Of course, you'd lose a lot of time with the load screens, like waiting for the timer to run out, going through the menus, things like that. So there needed to be a balance somewhere. I got 7 hours, 44 minutes, and 30 seconds.
Okay, so a long time for
Yes.
a speed run.
Very much so.
Tell me about like the mentality you need to do a run like that.
Well, if you watch my latest run, I was live streaming it. I was getting slap happy. I was so tired. No amount of caffeine could wake me up. So, but live streaming it was helpful. I had a couple friends and my brother hop in the chat. My fiance, I was watching at one point. It was very helpful to be able to kind of talk to people about it. It was a very unique experience. That was the first time I ever streamed on Twitch. There's definitely more time to be saved. I definitely would like to give it another go. And as for the future, this is definitely one of the lesser known Simpsons games. Most of the attention is turned towards Hit and Run, of course. It was another one of my favorites growing up. But I would like to see a lot more attention drawn to this and see just how fast these games can be beat. The mechanics are very simple. At least at this point in the game's speedrunning history and its life, there are no major glitches that you need to practice or any crazy strategies. So there is a Simpsons Road Rage Discord. Feel free to join that. Ask any questions you have. I'm active on it. Many other runners are active on it. Watch some of the old runs. See where you think you can do better. And it's a pretty straightforward game. Just enjoy it. So, oh god, this is it. Oy. Waiting for the clock to run out. Oh, jeez. I'm not doing this again for a while. Yeah, it's gonna be a minute before I even look at this game again. I'm not doing this again for a while.
Okay, I forgot to ask Lime to introduce himself to the camera for this segment, so I will introduce him for you. This is Lime. He just got the world record for the 100% category in the Link's Awakening 2019. Take it away, Lime.
It was my first serious speed game. This game has always sort of had a place in my heart, and specifically, I always wanted to do 100%. Because as a kid, it was the first Zelda game that I ever 100% completed. And so I was like, well, I kind of want to like relive that memory and do it over and over again. I never really took like a particular interest in the Game Boy games, speedrunning them. But then the remake came out, and it had, surprisingly, all these really, really cool tricks. You know, it's this modern game with tricks that are reminiscent of a very broken old game. What's cool about 100%, I think, is that you get to see a lot of the game. And that's sort of true for many Zelda 100% runs. Because there are a lot of chores and tasks to do as you run around collecting all the things you need. Basically, for Link's Awakening, it's pretty simple. It's just filling out the inventory screen. So you need all 14 collectible chamber stones, all 50 secret seashells, and all 32 heart pieces and all 9 heart containers, all dungeon keys and all items. You have a lot of chill segments where you're just doing a lot of movement, and you rack up little time losses from small movement mistakes, but for the most part it's really consistent once you've practiced it and gotten it down. So there's a quite broken glitch in Link's Awakening, sort of the staple glitch. It's known as Hinox Warp. Basically, when the Hinox grabs you in the game, there isn't like an actual grab, you're not moving, you're teleporting to his hand. And so if you interrupt this grabbing teleportation on the exact frame that it happens, the game sort of freaks out and it tries to find where Link actually needs to go. And so you warp all around the dungeon map, and eventually you end up wherever you are. And so we have these, pixel-based, frame-based setups where, it ends up being a frame-perfect trick. And you can use it to manipulate Link's position from one place in the dungeon to another. It's sort of like a wrong warp. This recent run, this was actually meant to be a bit of a de-rust. I wanted to get back into grinding the game, but it ended up I just played really well. Specifically, another one of the minigames is the trendy game. In this remake, they added these figurines, and one of the rewards for getting the last figurine is a chamber stone, which is part of the 100% requirements. And so what ended up being really good about my run is that every single item in the trendy game was first try, which is pretty rare, because some of them, just the way they're designed, the physics, it does not work well. They like to slip out of the crane. So I was really proud of that. There are really only 3 major time losses in my run. So the first one is I actually had a death, which is very rare, but, it happens. And that's probably the embarrassing one, but it only costs about 25 seconds, which is it's kind of a lot, but the other mistakes were worse. And then the second one was I was trying a new route in Dungeon 8, but I was like, I don't need to practice this, I'll just do it in the D-Rest. And then my D-Rest ended up being super good, and so I ended up losing about 1 minute and 15 seconds to that mistake, and I was pretty disappointed that I didn't practice. I was like, well, I should have just practiced this individual thing, because I ended up getting on a really good run. And then there was one more mistake, which was just I failed the trick 4 times. So those damp Equinox warps I mentioned, that's 5 frame perfect tricks right at the end of the run. So on the 4th one, every other one I got first try, but on the 4th one I got really nervous, and it's different because that specific Dampe dungeon has a challenge where you're not allowed to use your sword, so the visual cue is different. Normally I use the tip of my sword hitting a certain spot on the floor as my visual cue for hitting the trick, but without the sword, it becomes a little bit more feel-based, and you kind of have to use... I use Link's hat, kind of, but it's still not a great visual cue. And so I missed that 4 times, and that cost me about 1.5 minutes. Other than those big mistakes, it was pretty solid all around, so I think it'll be pretty tough from here to improve. The first hour is pretty relaxing. There aren't a ton of, crazy things that can go wrong. Normally, if I'm getting frustrated in the first hour, it's because I made a small mistake that ended up costing me 15 seconds, like the death I mentioned. I think about 40 minutes in is when you can start to detect a good run. So about an hour after that, you do fishing. And so fishing, like I mentioned before, is basically pure RNG. And so you're just re-rolling the pond until you get the fish you want. I think right now, honestly, a lot of people are more scared of fishing than they should be. Definitely runs can end there, but for the most part, you can continue despite having a pretty big loss. It can be discouraging. You can lose minutes there, but as long as you're consistently playing well in the other segments, you can sort of make up for that time loss. I don't think it's quite optimized to the point where you're resetting often, but resetting still a possibility. So after fishing comes basically the hardest, well, one of the hardest parts of the run. It sort of amps up in difficulty, so you get a good fishing and then you're really nervous because you have to do all these hard tricks. After fishing, you immediately do early lens, it involves air climbing. So right before fishing, you get the rooster companion, and the rooster basically breaks the overworld for this game, because the rooster allows you to do this glitch called air climbing, where you are on the edge of a ladder, the rooster's right there on the ladder with you, you pick him up, you slightly tilt your stick, and then you attach to this invisible ladder, and you climb all the way up into the air, and then you're able to float around and land wherever you need to. So you do this glitch early lens, where you air climb into a wall, and then you walk around on the wall, and you get in. After that, you have to do flame cave skip, and then we have another glitch, which is Dungeon 8 backdoor, and you do the Hinox warps. After Dungeon 8, you do more air climbs to get to Dungeon 7, and then after Dungeon 7, it's calm again. I would just say that 100% is worth a shot. If you're interested in learning Link's Awakening, I can definitely understand not wanting to start with, the longest category and, the most glitches and all these frame perfect things, but I think I want to start encouraging runners to at least try it because it's sort of my like child at this point. I love it to death. And I think it strikes just such a good balance of all of the things I love with Link's Awakening speedrunning. In all the splits where you're collecting stuff in the overworld, there's a lot of tight movement, and you're just sort of optimizing the way you do each room or little area. In the dungeons, you have these hard tricks. Some are frame perfect, some are not so frame perfect, but they still require some prowess and how you execute them. And then it also has some fun RNG, you know, it keeps it interesting, right? You know, it's got, I guess, content, right? To keep it fun.